Hey there everybody, my name is Kate and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. I want to give you a real quickie because I've got somewhere to go. However, somebody just said something on a video I was watching and I want to make it clear from my perspective how I see that he was talking about having the reserves. He was dealing with a couple of different situations where people passed in his life very tragically and traumatically, and one in a military situation or as a result of military action that was taken. That friend couldn't hang with it. His buddy was very torn up with PTSD and whatever happened with a family member that was very close to him. These were significant people and he was there as a support system for that person and felt the failure of, I didn't make it, at least on his buddy. I have no idea about the other family member, but what I wanted to bring forward was he's right on the money with saying that he went to the person's death that was most significant to him, that was coming up and was really being revisited over and over and over again. And he felt the powerlessness in that, with not being able to do anything with the information to help prevent that passing, prevent the choice to leave, rather than letting that be a natural thing in a natural age. He was very distraught by that because he is a light worker, a starseed, a healer, somebody with compassion, a lot of empathy, and oh my God, how could I help? Lost his power, he felt like, in that. It was very traumatic for him, and he suffered not just the trauma of the loss of being able to do anything to prevent something that was so painful for both of them. So they both suffered, and he had no way to comfort on any level. He didn't think. And so when he got in right at that point, deep work, hard work, and warriors work for darn sure, because that's not easy stuff. He had a couple of them, that were really sticking right there, and a lot of trauma around all of it. So diving into one point of contact, such as this is the one that's really most significantly painful for me, doesn't mean we automatically clear everything else at the same time. However, we knock back enough that we're basically just desensitizing ourselves to the experience of grief. Grief is not necessarily an easy process. There are a lot of folks, they've been plugged up for a long time, haven't cried since, they were asking for milk, in the very beginning. They haven't cried since then, and that cry of distress as an infant who's hungry is very different than the cry of an adult who's hungry for something way more than just that. They're hungry for explanation, they're hungry for help, they're hungry to get that nourishment of, I feel like I really am hungry for something and this isn't it, I'm literally starving. So there's a different intensity. However, that grief and those tears hit different. They fall out differently and they hit differently. And when we can't really deal, we've piled up so many opportunities to off-gas that. When it finally comes up in those tower moments where there's no way I'm going to off-gas this except for one big giant maybe, and that might purge it all. However, it probably won't. It might not, probably won't. I don't know. Those are all very subjective. However, it's not unreasonable to believe, at least in his case, that it might take one or two swipes at that. But the warriors work to even step towards it, to say, look, I got to jump right in there. And those were his words. People look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, jump into, grief. Are you kidding, Kate? Like, yeah, that's where the pearls are, man. You can't dive, and get anything from shallow waters, that the deep waters will offer you. They're not the same. You have to pass through the shallow to the deep and actually grunge around in there, open up a clam or two, or an oyster, whatever spits out the pearls. You have to open up the wisdom by digging around in that silt, whatever it is that's at the bottom of the ocean that would maybe obstruct a whole clam bed. And then once you even identify that, you're still in the muck to actually, procure the pearl, if you're going to actually get an authentic, real, genuine, deep sea, pearl that was procured. And we can't let anybody else procure our pearls for us, and we certainly can't call them our procured pearls when they're the duplicate replica plastic things from the surface somewhere. They're not the same. And so this kid, he understood that, and he went there and he said it actually made it a lot easier for me to consider going back and looking at every detail of the powerlessness that I felt. Where was I unable to provide something that could have prevented this? Where was I unable to be the support that my person needed? what happened in that process and how did I do this. He was down there looking for the oyster bed for a while, the clam bed, for a long time, in that when he was diving in there. And sometimes we're just thrown into the depths, and a lot of people they'll scramble, they'll do whatever they have to do to get back up to the top, to the surface. So, stop conversations, deny, ignore, divert, distract, addict, do whatever we have to do. But I'm not going down there. I'm just not. I'm going to do something else, and all that other stuff. Every other thing that you could do other than hopping right into the depths of pain and shadow, the only other options are to do something else, and that looks like everything you see up here of people who are not consciously working on being better humans. That's the activity you're seeing currently in March of 2026, which is pretty explosive and crazy looking and really distressing because it's destroying itself. The system doesn't sustain itself because it's not feeding on anything but itself. It's not feeding on anything new. Fake pearls have been around forever, and they don't sustain much of anything. You got to get the real stuff. So this kid was saying, having the stones in the bones to actually stand in the presence of what was really causing me pain. Those are his words. They're mine that I use when I'm talking to myself and talking about my process as well. But I was very happy to see that, that's really the understanding is reach in there. And sometimes you're going to get a pearl, and you have, an endless number that could be had. It's just we get better about being able to navigate. We know exactly where our oyster beds are now, or we at least know how to, find them more easily from up in here, rather than having to grunge the whole time to map them all out. But sometimes we do have to map a whole field out right there in the grunge. So it isn't about eliminating the silt or the icky or the, depth. It's about navigating it much better so that we can desensitize and go in there in a safe way and actually make our way out. We don't have an oxygen failure on the way down, or a, oh my God, hemorrhage of some kind or an air embolism come up because we rapidly tried to change our experience, and suddenly we're going, reality changed, and we've had a psychotic break and we don't know what to do. So can somebody hand me my, my favorite coping mechanism, which may be, crack for some of us, or it might be meth, or it might be, rage. It might be, a sudden snap, and I no longer am connected to this reality, and I'm going to be dangerous, real dangerous, until I'm changing course, either to lie down for a few minutes and be neutralized in terms of my effect, or until I change my mind. That's going to continue. That's the process. We're in the process. None of us is responsible for that twisting up of the evolutionary spiral. None of us is responsible for that. That's happening. The earth, cycles, they just happen. We're dropped into this system. We are not the system, and we're not causing the system. However, we propagate the system by participating in it. So I was so happy to see, this person talking about that, because that's really what prevents all of us from healing exponentially, is being able to dive into the depths for a minute, look around. You might find it's not as scary once you actually get down there and know how to navigate the dark. And when you don't know how to navigate the dark and you're in some shady submarine, I can see why people would be scared. And I definitely would never want to, be joining someone on their submarine if they didn't know what the hell they were doing. I want to know that you know what you're doing, but I'm not going to know any of that until I really have a good idea of what I might be stepping into when I even ask for help to submarine dive. We have everything we need here. We really do. We have everything here, and we don't have to get our help from outside, but we won't know where our threshold of when we need help is until we even face the fact that, the real pearls that you're looking for, that you're calling that stuff up here, are really down there. So thank you for your time. I hope that's helpful for you in some way. I got to go and do my work. But that was something that struck me that, this is part of my work right here first. So I'm going to go do more of my work just like this in a different area. So take care of yourselves. I hope you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin because you're divine. It's a big old giant wonderful submarine, knows absolutely what to do all the time. Consult with that captain because it's the captain of your ship, whatever vessel you choose to hop into. Enjoy your day. And take care, and I'll see you again next time, friends. Mwah! Bye.